That's a bop, man. That's a bop. All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, live from the Plungeon, from the 3-season porch, from the plottage. It is me, PlungeFather of the First Mint family, here to talk a little bit about market movement and flippers. We scheduled this show before we knew what was happening today. It was a busy, busy day in Top Shot. Lots to talk about, lots to digest, but we thank you for joining us. So before I bring on my first guest, who's going to be with us throughout, a couple little housekeeping reminders. So first things first, I am going to send out to the chat the Mint Madness round of 32 voting form. If you haven't seen it yet on Twitter, I don't blame you because it's been a super busy day. But we are currently running a Top Shot handle competition and had 64 entries that were picked by our pundits, Amir Blumenfeld of the Headgum Group and College Humor fame, Chugs and Bugs, GREGMURRAY, and TheReelPhilD. Each of them picked their number 1 through 8 seeds from a list of entries, and we randomly spun the wheel of names for the remaining 9 through 16 seeds. So right now we are in round 32, or in the round of 32. For that, we had some heavy hitters and some upsets in the first round that were announced earlier this morning, but we are finishing up the round of 32 voting. And once we collect all of those over the next 30 or 45 minutes, I'll send it out again at some point later in the show. We'll close that off and we'll announce the winners and like who's going to be in the Sweet 16 a little bit later on. So if you haven't yet, it has gotten real. I see Caruso's missing hair, who's been helping me out with some music stuff. There are some like seeds that are higher seeds that are on the ropes right now. So all of the votes counts. If you're in the chat right now and you're one of the people that are in there, try and shill yourself, convince everybody that your name is the best. I have my personal favorites. I've certainly voted. But anyway, we are going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. But before we do that, and before we talk about that, I would like to bring on a very special guest, one of the kind of best, in my opinion, Twitter follows when it comes to data and analytics and cool data viz, like data visualization. It's my guy, Steef. So I'm going to introduce him here. Steef, welcome to the show. How are you?
Going? I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. No, it's the pleasure is mine here. I'm a big fan of all that you're doing and all that you're sharing with the community. For everybody that's new or hasn't been a part of this yet, we sort of split off this show from the Friday live stream that we have with LG Doucette and TheReelPhilD to sort of be a little bit more focused on data and analytics and a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the kind of macro and micro things that are happening within the Top Shot marketplace, and to try and pick apart a little bit what is happening and explain it in a little bit more detail. The idea being that hopefully, and we're not the experts beyond all experts, but like hopefully we can sort of bring some context to things that you might be seeing, or to answer some questions that you might have, or don't even know that you should have about what's happening out there. And if you guys don't know, Steef's been doing a lot of awesome stuff. And his website is called Rookshot.Market that he runs. And I'm going to send that in the chat as well. And we'll talk a little bit about how that got started. But before we do that, Steef, what's your Top Shot story? How long have you been in? How did you get in? And we'll start there.
I actually just looked it up today. I mean, I had, I was looking up my worst beats, and I went back all the way through my history and found out I joined on January 6th. So I've been around for a bit. It was like right at the tail end of Series 1. I think I got a couple of Series 1 packs before I switched over.
Do you remember like what you got in your first pack, or is that something that you look back on?
Oh God, I don't remember what I got in my first pack, but I remember that I got, I ended up getting a Zion pretty quickly. And I sold it for some ungodly poor amount that I regret today. But
yeah, you were telling me something about maybe it was Anthony Edwards or something that you got some
that's right.
Rookies.
There was one day, I think it was like January 25th or something like that. I went through on a pack buying spree at a time where you could still buy packs on sprees, and I kept getting Anthony Edwards, and I sold 6, I think, Anthony Edwards S2s. For under $35, and I was thrilled at the time, I'm sure. But I mean,
looking back, so I just pulled open Rookshot.Market for anybody else that hasn't seen it. And again, I'll show it off in the chat. But we'll take a look really quickly at Anthony Edwards over the last couple months, or at least more recently. And we'll definitely talk about Anthony Edwards in the context of news, because this is something I would like to get to a little bit later on if anybody saw this on Twitter earlier today. But looking at sort of the visualization of the S2 rookies over time, sort of like 1.6 down in here. This is sort of when you sold it off, right?
Yeah. So sometime before that, really, when was the first true, like, large bump? The beginning of February that we had?
It was January 21st, 22nd was sort of the massive run up, which it's funny that it looks so flat. Yeah. Like right in here was the first weekend after the Bales article that came out. The I think it was the Ja Morant dunk that they bought for $35,000, and that was the big news. And there were like 4 or 5 or 6x in terms of users that came in around January 21st. That it was kind of on the tail end of that brand new news. And it went from, everything kind of spiked up into, the $500 territory. I remember when LaMelo hit like $500, it was like, holy cow, this is crazy. But we got that DFS bump. I saw that in the chat. Anthony had a rally. We got that DFS bump. And then later on, this bump in here, sort of the peak that hit from, 221 and beyond, on the back of, a lot of those ESPN articles and so forth. So Anthony Edwards at 17-13 now. I bet you're regretting not selling 6 of those for $30, but
I guess so. It was all in service of something else at the time, and it's it worked out. So
sure. Well, so we talk about like timing, right, a lot in our private conversations and sort of how we interact with various other people. So I'm curious, in terms of timing and talking about timing now, reflective of January 6th or whatever that you got in early on, kind of what has your perception of like time scale? How has that changed over the last couple months?
Oh, man. Yeah, those early, I'd say for most of January, I had no idea what I was doing. So like, I was just like interested into it. I got into this because I was a collector as a kid, but like, it just feels like it keeps getting warped because we keep getting, especially for that time period, most of February, it just seemed like things kept getting bigger, and it just seemed unstoppable. And now we've been in this lull, as you might expect, for the last couple of weeks, which is totally different. So it's just like, it feels like it's constantly adjusting to, the pace of the market, which is still pretty quick at this point.
It seems sort of, I agree with you. And it seems everything is so relative, right? Like when we think about slowness or like stagnation in the market now, as compared to early February or even in earlier January, the volumes are so much higher than they were at that point in terms of like daily sales and so forth, especially in between that massive spike that we saw, and then like these massive marketplace downtimes that happened in between the pack drops that we saw until the base sets were released and the Seeing Stars packs came out. So that period it's felt icky. I don't know. A lot of people kind of felt that way, but
it ruins all of my visualizations because there's this big dark spot in the middle of all of them now for the
right. Yeah, it's kind of funny to think about that. So let's shift gears a little bit. I think there's a lot of things that that are on people's minds. I was on Twitter earlier this evening. Obviously, for anybody that's joining us that missed the pack drops, I'm sorry. There was a stress test drop that came there of 5,000 packs that at 5 or 4 o'clock Pacific time. And then very quickly thereafter, a 25,000 pack drop that came at 5 p.m. Pacific. I got aced on both of them. I didn't get a pack in either of them. Were you so lucky, or are you? Oh
no. If you missed them, don't feel bad, because I missed both by a country mile and I was there. So
yeah, I was bummed.
It was in the 60,000s both time, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think I was thinking 38,000 in one of them and something like 75,000 in the other one. So not high enough on the influencer list. But I'm curious what your thoughts on sort of those new pack drops, which were pretty focused on the old Series 2, maybe Series 2.1, if you will. of the like 15,000 and the 12,000 mints, and some of the remaining rookies like Anthony Edwards. I think this is, if not the last, maybe one of the last hurrahs for those pack or like for those moments as a whole. So is there anything in there that you were like, oh man, I'm really sad that I didn't get that thing, or you missed out on those things?
I mean, I guess it's always it'd be cool to still have a chance. This is me, somebody who is like regretting selling 6 Anthony Edwards in one day that I got in packs over and over again. Like it'd be great to have a shot at one of those rookies again, I think. But beyond that, it's cool that it's cool that they were able to sort of spin out that sort of throwback pack for a minute there.
Yeah, it was nice. And I think that, there's so much conversation around 3 badge rookies and what does that moment mean relative to some of the other stuff, whether it's Seeing Stars or the Rising Stars packs that came out for the All-Star game. So I'm curious. So with the announcement, or another part of the news day today was, for anybody that missed it, there was a minting that happened. And for anybody that's not familiar, the way that these moments that get packed up in packs for NBA Top Shot, the way that they become and like NFTs, these non-fungible tokens, is they get minted on the blockchain. And there are a couple websites like cryptoslam.io, but also Top Shot Explorer, which I'll show in a minute, that you can gather information relatively quickly as to what's happening behind the scenes. So there was this massive spike in flurry of activity on Twitter, set off by people recognizing that something was happening behind the scenes. So I want to show really quickly what we saw so that we can kind of contextualize the conversation around how something may affect the market longer term, and how we know for some of those folks that have been around a little bit longer and are a little bit more familiar with the tools that are out there for us to visualize and see what's happening, like what exactly is going on. So to provide some context, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to CryptoSlam as well as to Top Shot Explorer, and I'll put both of these in the chat as well, topshotexplorer.com if you're not familiar with it. And then also cryptoslam.io. Both of these are sites that are tapped into the Flow blockchain and will report and show directly from that blockchain the transactions that are happening. So not just transactions in the sense that they are like for buys and sells, but it will also show activity as it relates to minting of new moments. So along the right side here, again, this is cryptoslam.io. CryptoSlam also checks and tracks other NFT projects and other token projects as well. So it's not just Top Shot, but this is the Top Shot view within CryptoSlam. You can see on this live mint over here that there are minting coming from and for these Seeing Stars, or excuse me, for these All-Star game moments. And the reason that we know that they're All-Star game moments is that on Top Shot Explorer, from the blockchain, we actually see that there are new sets. And this new set popped up right when the plays started getting minted and confirmed that there was a new set that is now open that has a number of moments within it. And initially, when we saw this, and some people reported that they were seeing these things kind of getting minted on CryptoSlam, many of us ran directly to Top Shot Explorer to find out what is this thing that they're minting. And what we saw right away was that all of these mints, the total minted was blank because they didn't know yet how many would be minted for this particular set. But what we were seeing initially was called Platinum Ice. And for anybody that doesn't know, and because it's not particularly well publicized, there are, for every single moment in Top Shot, of which there are somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'm on add more funds right here, 1,244 moments right now across commons, commons, rares, legendaries, across Series 1, Series 2, all these different sets. So for every single moment, regardless of what it is, they mint 3 platinum ices before they mint all of the other moments in the set. So these platinum ices are 3 of 3, 1, 2, and 3 of 3. And we don't know exactly what they're going to do with these platinum ice sets yet, but you see this S2 platinum ice. And for every single play that's been minted for a Series 2 set, you will see all 485 of them have 3 of 3 moments within there. We speculate, or some of us are speculating, that these will be utilized for potentially like prizes from the hardcore application, might be for gifting to players. For example, if they're, involved with some other like promotional purpose, they might auction them off. But if you can imagine like having one of three of only 3 minted of a particular moment, think about like the LeBron Kobe tribute dunk, right? There's 3 platinum ice of those somewhere here that we don't know what their plans are. But when we see those platinum ices, when we see them get minted, what that means is that plays are coming in a later set. So what we did, we knew and saw that the platinum ices were coming. And we immediately went to the S2 sets, saw that this All-Star Game S2 was created. And then correspondingly, once the actual moments started to get minting within the set, the first one that got minted, I think was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the James Harden or Kyrie Irving. Might have been something different. I forget which one specifically what it came out of. But the I have to reload this. Maybe not. 10. It minted to 2021, which was the same mint size as the Rising Stars sets that came out in the packs that came out last weekend. Right, I think last weekend, right around the All-Star Game. So what we can infer from that, what I think we can infer from that is that the All-Star Game is probably a rare set. What we can also infer from that is because that there are 22 moments minted. There are 20 moments that are minted and 2 that don't have any mint count, that Giannis and Damion Lillard, which are the 2 that don't have mints, those will be the challenge rewards for the corresponding sets. So that was me giving some context to folks about that may not know how this stuff works. But Steve, what's your reaction? Did you see any of this in real time, or at least hearing it now? Kind of what's your reaction to this new All-Star set getting minted?
I mean, it's like my reaction when I heard about it when I was at work today is I mean, I guess in some respects it's a little perplexing given that they already have the Seeing Star set out there, which is similar in a lot of respects, but certainly still has the same mint count. And I think you saw a lot of panic on the market initially. I haven't checked to see if it's still continuing, and you saw those prices go down because of it. But the day moment being missing is not shocking at all. I assume that's going to be his final shot of the game from half court, which a lot of people were calling for. So that's awesome. But why wouldn't they utilize the actual game itself if they could?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you see like Chris Paul, and you can see the play type in here. So you see Chris Paul with the rim play, like that's going to be his dunk, like almost guaranteed, right? So I'm excited about this too, and it's sort of curious. And you mentioned this, like there's a lot of saturation of context around All-Star Game right now, and I think initially we saw sort of this panic happen, and the market got affected by that. So I'm curious. Let's talk through kind of what you saw. I think you put a tweet out there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen if you want to start sharing yours. Let's talk about a little bit about like moments and movement within the market based on news in real time. And we can sort of talk through what tools you use to look at this stuff. But I'm curious what happened. Like, let's talk through what did it look like in the 30 minutes prior to this stuff? What did it look like in the 30 minutes or the last 3 hours that it's come after the fact? And sort of what have we seen?
Sure. I mean, the initial thing that I did when here, 1 second, I'll share my screen. I put out a chart probably a couple hours ago at this point, and so you can see the initial dip. It isn't really that dramatic, but it's also it's a continuation of the the overall dip those moments have been seeing for the last little bit. So maybe. Can you
zoom in? Sorry to interrupt. Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should be able to pull this up full screen. Just log into my data record. So, but yeah. So maybe it's a blip, and maybe it's just a reaction to the news, which we see a lot. That's probably a bit better, although the text is all messed up now. But you're seeing this little dip over here, which is kind of what we see after news events, and a lot of the times with Anthony Edwards, which we'll talk about later, you see the positive spike. But with this, you see a negative spike. So, but generally, most of the time, you see these things recover. This might be a little different though, because you're essentially seeing a set of cards that is minted that is pretty similar. I think a lot of people had the assumption that Seeing Stars was sort of the de facto all-star set. And then there's a lot of questions about, what does that mean for the challenges? People assume that because LeBron was missing, there would be a LeBron challenge. I don't know if that was ever actually confirmed.
Yeah, and that actually just came up. I believe there was a blog post that came out within the last hour or two before this that you might not have seen, that on the NBA Top Shot blog, confirming the LeBron challenge will happen after the Durant, and it will be all 12 moments that were not included in the Durant, excluding Mike Conley, which is currently a separate challenge. So the big outlier there is AD gets pulled in with Team LeBron, even though he didn't play on Team LeBron.
Right.
So it's the 12 moments that were not contained within, which is what we assumed anyway.
Yeah.
But that was confirmed in the blog. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe this doesn't end up having too much of an impact, overall. But we can look at which one of the bigger moments that we have in there. We can look at one of the more recent.
Let's take a look at the Steph Curry, which is sort of like the third or fourth most pricey of the Seeing Stars moments. Let's see what we saw with sales prices over that time. And actually, so you're for everybody that doesn't know, he is in Evaluate.Market right now, which I'm going to send the link to in case you want to follow along. And I actually just added the expand function. If you see in the top right corner of that graph widget, it'll take over the full screen, which is awesome. So we can see it in a little bit more detail. So this looks like it's over March 10th, but if we just looked at like the last flurry of activity just after the pack drop to this afternoon, you can zoom in over the top of that little collection of things there, and we can see, that's where it is.
Wow.
So
all sorts of stuff happening.
So this is actually super interesting to me. And actually, if you can just highlight over the top of that flurry of activity there, this to me, so that news, if you highlight the far left bullet point, that's the post pack drop news, right? Yeah, so that's 5:25 p.m. or something along those lines. So that's after you see the big blank space there before it. That was when the marketplace was down before, like during the pack drop, and then everything since then. Yep. So we're seeing that move up. I think the news for this was a little bit before the pack drop. So any of the effect of the announcement or the minting of those moments would have been the tail end of the sales that happened right before the marketplace going out.
Yeah, that's so. I mean,
that looks like a rebound to me. I don't know about you, but
these last sales. These are high serials too, and they're all in the 700 range. I mean, that's even maybe higher than what I saw it on yesterday. I don't know what the exact numbers were, but
it was. It definitely is, which is kind of funny to me. So it's almost like there's a initial panic. Some people start listing things lower, and then the people that are like, awesome, give me more, feed me. I would gladly take these for cheaper because I'm planning to do the LeBron challenge, regardless of whether or not there's this other nebulous rare pack, that's the camp that I'm in, is I'm still planning to do the KD and the LeBron, or at least plan to execute that. And if it got too cost prohibitive, I would probably sell off the pieces that I had accrued. But I think the expectation, especially because Steph and Luka and Giannis are all on Team LeBron, is that now that that's announced, right? The announcement with the blog, which came out right around this time, that confirms that that's used. So that bounce back is probably, at least for those 12 moments, very correlated to that as well.
Yeah, and you had to expect as soon as they confirmed that Team LeBron's moments were going to spike, and that I sort of hope that folks collectively might have done it already, because that starting lineup is just brutal. So if you're trying to get through it, but
so I see Taylor in the chat. He was our guest last Tuesday. He runs mintedmoment.substack.com. And he just confirmed like our team LeBron now is up to not mine, up to 4,350, which is probably $1,000 north of what it was before, if not more.
Yeah. So when I did this chart, it was 3,100. So
yeah, so just off of that, so 3,100, 43 over 31.
Like a couple hours. So
12, you're looking at what is that? A third, 30% up, 25 to 30% up,
25 to 30. Yeah, something in that range. It's significant.
You know, these challenges get announced, and I think it's important to recognize as well here that like this was assumed, right? The confirmation of this in the blog. It's good that everybody knows now, or in theory, anybody that reads the blog. But like for the most part, this was known, right? It's not an unknown thing. In the same way that rookie badges, like they're known, but when something gets publicized about it, things change, right? So I think the point that we were trying to make sure we covered tonight was that there are all sorts, like this is a very reactionary market in general in Top Shot. And there are lots of ways that the market reacts to different news or different circumstances, whether it's new pack drops, whether it's new news from Dapper, whether it's the introduction of a star into the Top Shot community, which I tried to time a Damion Lee thing back in the day. I'll talk about that if we have time. But I'm curious what else, like performance wise or like related to things that are happening on the court. It looks like you had done some work with Anthony Edwards on that. I'm curious. Let's talk about that a little bit and what you found there, and sort of let's maybe draw that out a little bit further as to what people might be able to take forward and learn from the example that you pulled out today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can, I'll start with. I was actually, if I pull up my screen share, I'm looking at the sets because I was just checking to see. It's been interesting. The last couple of days, we've seen the total cost of the base sets has risen pretty consistently for about 3 days now, which is something we haven't seen in a while. So that is something to watch. But let's go to Mr. Edwards. Is this large enough, you think?
Not quite. I think if you could, even if you just like control and scroll and zoom, perfect. Just zoom in, that's perfect. So yeah, can you kind of articulate what it is that we're looking at? Just highlight.
Yeah. So this is just sales data from Evaluate Market. That I pulled from the tables at the bottom of their player moment pages, and Anthony Edwards for he just has the ability to impact the market with either a single like a moment, for lack of a better word, or with a big game. It just seems like every time that he goes off, like his moments his moment does as well. He's got more than one now, but he didn't for most of this. So when he had the infamous dunk here, you can see that his price spiked. I can't remember what the percentage was, but we were talking from 760 to the 1415. So, almost doubling. And then again, over here, I wasn't able to find a singular moment. This could have been just with the market because it's in the February 22, 23 range.
I think that's probably the spike in the market overall when LaMelo started going and then everything followed. So Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, and I think there was just the three of them that sort of took off even more so than all the other rookies. But they sort of over the time there sort of rose very, very quickly.
Yeah, and then you have another. This was actually right before the game where he was playing LaMelo in the game when they went against each other, and then again a couple nights ago where he had I don't know, maybe like 3 viral dunks. Or viral dunk worthy, things, plus 34 points, which I believe is a career high for him, which sent his moments again sort of soaring. And, the interesting thing about Anthony Edwards against some of the other stuff is, you do see these things these flashy things tend to fall off, but not really with Edwards. I mean, his fall off here is consistent with, most of the rest of the market, maybe perhaps for this LaMelo moment. This has elevated, these events have sort of elevated the price of his moment each time. And you don't really see that with some of the other stuff, some of the other, things we look at. I can even bring up, Bobby Toppin might be the best example of that recently.
With the dunk contest?
Yeah. Or you could look at, this is another one I did recently where, you have a star like Rudy Gobert who had an unbelievable game. the other night with 24 rebounds. Somebody astutely pointed out there's no rebound moment in NBA Top Shot, which is good. But
I don't know if that's good. I don't
know. I mean, that's a good point.
It's a good point. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good
before. Thing. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that really, there was only really 3, maybe 4 sales of his Series 1 moments after that game, which is like a totally, it's a totally different market for rookies as opposed to, say a mid-level star or even some established stars we've seen. But, I do want to show something like Obi Toppin because, he is sort of more of the norm of this stuff where we see, the announcement. This was more of an announcement that he's going to enter the dunk contest. I mean, he's an absolutely terrific dunker. He almost won. But, people started buying him up based on that. And, and he hasn't gotten a ton of minutes this season. He hasn't, I don't want to call him a disappointment in his first season, of course, but, I think people were expecting a lot from him. So he had been sort of middling in the market before this point. And then, after the dunk contest, you just saw him fall off. This is, I believe this is the 7. So this is a period where the market is out. But, he actually fell further than he was before the dunk contest was announced. It was, and that's what you typically see with these sort of flashy events is, they'll typically at least fall back to where they were.
It's sort of interesting when you see the telltale sign of this happening in a chart like this, where you're looking at specific sales data, are these walls, right? When something happens where it's a specific wall, because that means there was a listing out there that then got executed essentially. So you see these walls that are straight up, and what that's actually meaning and what that's actually happening is, okay, let's say there's 100 moments that are listed, or let's say there's 4,000 Obi Toppins. Let's say 500 of them were listed, and there are, let's say 20 to 50 of them that are in the like reasonable range down towards the bottom, and the rest of them are sort of like way up in the stratosphere. What happens when those moments, like when these news cycles flash and something happens, all of the lowest price moments just get snapped up one after the other, like in a matter of minutes. It's so fast, and there's so many people engaged on Twitter. There's so many people that are following each other. There's an ecosystem in Discord. You'll see it all the time, that there's sort of like the phone tree goes out and someone's like, go, like it's time. And every listing gets snapped up. And the reason that you don't see it stop anywhere is because no one has time to process, oh, let me list it here, right? It's the people that are trying to buy that are driving that up. And then once it hits a point that the market's not too hungry for that moment at the level that the lowest ask hits, then you sort of see this sort of regression as the sellers or the people that own the moments that weren't trying to buy one realize, okay, this is the top. Let me start undercutting. Let me start trying to get my money out of here at this point. And you sort of see that kind of revision and regression back. So it's sort of interesting to see like those specific walls. And it's something that the guys in the First Mint, like we talk about all the time. And it's like these moments that are happening and sort of the reaction of the market as a whole. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna bring in one of those guys right now, Mr. Chugs and Bugs. I'd love to get his thoughts on the charts that you've been showing, and specifically related to some of these newsworthy things that have happened. Chugs, have you been listening in? Do you have any thoughts on whether it's the Anthony Edwards dunk or the Obi Toppin news, how the market reacts to specific things that happen out there in the NBA ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been tuning in. I've unfortunately been watching the Bachelor finale with my wife, which was brutally boring. It's really good when there's like 40 million chicks just all going crazy and like having a bunch of good dramatic sound bites. But when it gets down to 2, it's just like sad because they're just like, the guy sucks at that point. He's just like breaking hearts. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I guess talking about just like how the day-to-day like splash moments can surge the market. I mean, I think it's totally been proved, like it bears out in any kind of piece of data or intraday or, you know, that night chart that Steef's like been really awesome at putting out. I mean, it, you know, the FOMO bid is real, right? In Top Shot. And it happens in these quick spurts, you know, whether it's 6 to 12 hours, if anybody has a particularly big night. So, you know, without knowing like the full context of what y'all were talking about, yeah, I mean, I totally think that, you know, anytime you see like a huge viral moment and it gets tweeted out by like Bleacher Report or NBA, you know, NBA.com or whatever, any of those like big outlets where it really gets out there, that's obviously like the first thing anybody who's remotely engaged in Top Shot, they're gonna be like, where's their Top Shot at? Like, do they have a Top Shot? Like, where's it at? You know, like that's like Anthony Edwards obviously is more of a household name at this point, but like if it's some rando, like, you know, 2-guard that goes off for like 40 in a night or like has some crazy play, like you're gonna be like, hey, does that person have a Top Shot? And you're gonna try to go find it. And of course there's gonna be sharps that are gonna just snap up, you know, the floor of that name. And who knows if it holds, right? But like that's, you know, that's the name of the game for flippers as we like.
Well, we'll get into that in a minute. One thing that I do want to call out though, and as well, and I saw this bear out in my, I'll share my screen here, my sort of foray into trying to time the wave of the Damion Lee entry into the Top Shot ecosystem is that it's not always, it actually is far more prevalent in the base moments. So the sort of like market reaction and then the massive sales spikes are almost all related to and correspondent with base moments. The rares for particular players and legendaries definitely are insulated to a degree from some of this stuff because they're so much more illiquid generally. And I actually got burned on that before, but the example that I gave, and I can send the actual status if people want to read it all out, but from back in early or like mid-February, is that Damion Lee, who's a guard on the Warriors, if you weren't familiar, he entered and like tweeted out that he wanted to get involved in Top Shot. And right away after that news, there was a massive spike in the sales. Again, that singular wall that you were seeing of like all of the base set moments that were there or like all at the low ask just got snapped up all the way. And there was some sustained action with that over time because he was planning, or he ended up going on and interacting with a handful of people on Twitter, like Kylo Ren, who offered him his SN2 moment or serial number 2 moment. And then further on down, we saw him go on to Club Top Shot with Pete Overzat and Jack Settleman and Peter Jennings and all those folks. And it was super interesting that you would expect, or one might expect from the outside, that when you're live on a YouTube stream involved with people talking about this thing for the first time, and he was one of the first people that really, or one of the first NBA players, I should say, that was like actively exposed and engaged, the sales dried up because the market had already taken all of the low asks out of the equation, and there wasn't an appetite for his moments at the particular level that they were at. So I ended up getting like I got out of it at the right time. I think I made a little bit of profit out of it. But you see those spikes and you see those reactions and those walls when something new comes in. So that was sort of my foray into that. I don't do that anymore because I'm not good enough at timing it. So I'm curious, Chugs, are you in that game? Are you trying to time anything on the market these days, or are your strategy a little bit different?
Absolutely not. It's just not my bag. I'm more of a it's strategic versus tactical short-term, strategic long-term. I'm 100% a strategic player in Top Shot. Obviously that means I probably leave certain opportunities, on the table, because there was a perfect example was, there was a guy who he had tweeted out, I should probably find it, but I generally get with the gist of what he was saying. It was related to my comment off Greg's tweet about flippers, like that great graphic about flippers, which I presume we'll get into, but
yeah, let me pull it up.
Okay. Anyway, there was a guy who commented, and he was like, hey, I'm, out here trying to defend, flippers everywhere. And he like laid out what he had been doing. And he had basically said that he he had like 90 something moments, and he's traded in and out a bunch, and he's up maybe like 1,000 in terms of like total value. He's up maybe like $1,000 in total value. Like he's gone from like 39,000 to like 40,000 in like his terms of his total account, but he's got like 20 something more moments to go with it. And so I commented back and I was like, look, man, hats off to you. Like that's great. But like for every guy like you who can execute like that and who's like on the screws and like knows good entry and exit points, there's probably 10 times the people that are trying to emulate you that just aren't as good. Like no disrespect to like the people out there, but like the point there is that grinding like that and being like a day trader of Top Shot essentially, like that's hard as hell. Like just and part of that's kind of like, if you can't do, you teach. Like for me, like I can't, I haven't done it. So like, I'm kind of talking from like a spot, like kind of weak ground under me, but that's why I don't play there though. Cause like, I know that it's not my bag. And like, I'd rather, like I got 2 kids. Like what if I get pulled away for a couple hours and I lose that opportunity and then my moment to make a quick like $50 on something is gone. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you're doing that kind of trade, that's what you're playing in, right? Like it's times of the essence and all that stuff. And obviously the marketplace has put certain restrictions on that to make it to where you can't flip that quickly. But that still means like you have to be, execution risk is a real thing. Like you have to be able to execute and, and put on like lots of trades, buys and sells, not simultaneously anymore, but like you have to be able to do a lot of stuff and a lot of churn to really make it worth your while. And that's, and the data sort of bears that out, like an average profit of $32 and average loss of 33. Like you kind of net that out. It's like a net, maybe $16 gain. You got a 5% transaction fee involved. You got taxes later, which is a whole nother bag. Like,
let's not even go there.
but I mean, the point is like, that's a whole lot of work for like what largely amounts to a kind of fruitless result. Right. And like, I hate to shit on that for like the people out there who are like, really trying to pursue that grind. Just understand like that's a very tough road, and kudos to the ones that can do it. Like that guy who commented, I wish I had it. I'd give him a shout out, but not everybody's that guy. I'll try to find him while you guys can kind of take the floor on it.
Yeah. Steve, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, like it's the same thing in any other market. It's just hard to do. And I think it's gotten way harder. I think this was something that was easier to do maybe certainly a month ago, 2 months ago. It was something that there was a little bit of time because there weren't as many people involved. But it is way harder and it is really easy to get burned, but like I take moments and I guess I would be more of a swing trader now at this point if I was anything. I'm definitely a collector, but I trade moments that I think will gain in value over medium terms and that's with like somebody like a Kevin Porter or something like that who's who came back from after being out of the league for the entire season. That's something I might do, but it's in service of getting moments that I covet later. So, I don't think it's entirely I think it does get a bit of a bum rap to some extent, but.
Yeah. And I would say just for anybody that saw this tweet or is seeing it for the first time now, GREGMURRAY is one of the guys that we work with on the First Mint stuff. And the context here is these are sales transactions where a single serial number was purchased and that same serial number was then sold off within a week. So 7 full days between the 8th and the 14th. It's not reflective of I got this thing in a pack and then I sold it after the fact. We don't have that data. We can't find that, or we can't get that data right now with the restrictions on the capabilities we have. So it was purchased at X price and sold at Y price within 7 days of each other. And so it's, I think, really interesting to look at this and some of the outliers here. Greg sent me, he wasn't able to join us here. The outliers, there was one LaBella Ball Rising Stars that was number 67. It was bought for $5K and sold for $79.99 17 minutes later on the 8th. So, $2,600 profit. And then another outlier, Tyrese Halliburton, number 34, bought for $1,700 and sold for $3,300 7 hours later on the 11th for a profit of about $1,400, just over $1,400. So there are timing elements that can work, right? Like you can make a bag on some of this stuff if you time it absolutely perfectly. It's just really hard to do that. And to your point, Chugs, and I actually I tip my hat to those folks that can do that, that like they know they can time it and like are committed to that. You have to have conviction in that to be able to like, okay, this is going to go up, and that's what I know from the research that I've done, and I'm like, I'm investing in my thesis. So I don't think it's an inherently bad thing, and I certainly I will preach it from the rooftops as well. And I keep yelling at people, and I don't mean to be mean in Twitter, but like the concept of people getting packs and then flipping them being an inherently bad thing in the Top Shot marketplace. Like I disagree categorically with that statement, because as someone who came into this in January, and a huge portion of my balance in Dapper is a function of getting packs and then turning those packs that rise in price to Dapper balance that I can then execute on these longer strategic trades. Like that's how you build Dapper balance, right? Is to do that stuff. Like getting the $14 pack that turns into $1,400 is the easiest way to build balance, right? And I don't know that that's necessarily a problem. The second piece of that is if everybody that got a pack was a hardcore collector and never sold things because they were in it for the collection, every moment would be exorbitantly expensive because nothing would be listed. Or if it was listed, it would be for a ridiculous price that the market wouldn't bear. So keep that in mind. Is like there's a double-edged sword with this. Is like having more listings and more people that are trying to like sell off the thing that they just got is a generally good thing for collectors that want to buy into a challenge or buy a moment that they like, because there is more volume of listings to be had, and the market forces can play their role in determining what is the value of a particular thing, right? So I have very strong feelings about that. It is fine if people disagree with me. I think there's plenty of them that disagree with me, but I think there's a lot more context to it that needs to be brought forward. Other thoughts on flipping stuff in general? I know that I'm not good at it. I'm in Chugs' boat, but Steve or Chugs, any final thoughts on the concept of flipping?
No, just be careful. I mean, it's just like, you can really get burned really easily, but more power to you if you're good at it. But I mean, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. Is like anytime that I see people on Twitter, in the crypto space, talking about day trading on crypto, it's just like have a plan and stick to it. Like that's the difference a lot of these times is, somebody asks them, they hit the point that they were going to sell their moment at or their, whatever their commodity may be. And, they ask themselves, what if, for a second, and then they're, the moment that they had is gone. So there's a lot of mixed bags there, but
I totally get you. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was going to say, I think Steve, what he said earlier, it definitely adds a good wrinkle to kind of what I was saying, where in general, like the flipping simply to flip, like in particularly playing in the secondary market, like, oh, I'm going to get this thing for $12 and it's going to be 18 and I'm just going to do that a zillion times over. I think what Steve mentioned, kind of having if you're doing it as a means to sort of a longer term strategy or goal or a target that you're trying to get to, that sort of, puts it, it sort of frames out what you're doing a little better versus just, again, I'm just going to buy this thing for $15 and hope it goes to 20, and I'm just going to do that over and over and over again, and eventually I'm going to have a bunch of Dapper. I feel like, again, the data bears it out. Like that's a long, hard path, and a lot of things can happen in between then and now. And then to your point, Plunge, in terms of like getting packs, the primary, call it like the primary market, right? Like getting stuff at cost. I mean, flipping out of that, like I have zero issue with people wanting to do that, like zero, like no issue whatsoever. So, when I talk about flipping, I'm more referencing like trying to get cute in the secondary market. I I don't see that as a like long-term viable strategy. But again, there are certain people who can knock that out of the park. All credit to you. You know.
Yeah. I think the more that the more data that we have available to us, the easier it is to access that data, and the faster we're able to access that data in real time, the more the day traders may be able to be successful in some of this stuff. It's also part of the reason why they are and have like made the edict from the NBA Top Shot space, prohibiting the like paid services that allow you to like snipe moments as compared to tools that are free for everyone to use. And there's not a lot of detail that's been brought about that. Jacob talked about it at office hours last Friday, and Roham sort of mentioned it. But there are tools out there, and I don't use any of them. I've never seen any of them, but there are tools that are tapped into the Flow blockchain and can identify listings before they actually make it to the UI in Top Shot, which allows you to then like get ahead of the curve in the grand scheme of things. And that's just like inherently unfair in the grand scheme of like in the marketplace. But as that becomes more available to everyone in a free service or whatever those things are, like the market is going to market, right? Like that's the Chugs anthem, right? Market's going to market. There is going
Absolutely.
to be, as long as, and I'm a proponent of like letting it do its thing. And I don't like the restrictor plates that they put on it in the grand scheme of things, because it artificially deflates or inflates the speed or the velocity at which things move. It's necessary, I understand, to an extent, because of the technical problems that they're facing. I am hopeful that they will solve those technical problems sooner rather than later, so that they can remove the restrictions and the artificial manipulation that is necessary to keep them afloat. Because when they do, the market forces that are in play will, like, market's going to market, right? Like, we're going to find out where things fall, and people are going to be able to sort of execute on their strategy in whatever way, shape, or form that is. So we are, it's 9:52 already Central Time where I am. Steve, anything else from your like recent data dumps, anything that like you're proud of and you're like, hey, this visualization's awesome and everyone should see it, that I can pull up or should show for everyone before we talk a little bit more about the Moment Madness stuff?
I mean, I don't know that there's anyone in particular. We can go. I mean, but it's already getting like we can move on to the Minted Madness. I know. I mean, definitely check out Rookshot.Market. You know, there's rookie charts that are updated there daily. You know, I have charts. You know, I'll usually put out 1 or 2 charts a day. I have market overview stuff. You know, anything that I post on Twitter goes on my website 30 minutes to an hour earlier. So if you want to get the jump, you can check the website if you think the stuff is valuable. So you know, please check it out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was I think the first time I saw some of your stuff was in a Discord somewhere. I was like, holy cow, this is incredible. And then you very shortly thereafter started your website, and I was like, oh, thank you. I'm so glad that this exists in a place that I can just go look for it.
I was gonna say, don't be bashful. Rookshot's freaking awesome.
It's awesome.
The animated charts, just like I said it one time on Twitter, inject that into my veins. Like, seriously.
Let's
give me more animated charts.
This is series 1 over the last 3 months since the beginning of the year. Look at you, Cam Reddish, spiking there. Wonder what happened. He probably had a good game in there.
Probably had a good game.
Yeah, RJ. People realize that RJ is the only 3-badge rookie in that series. Yep. And for anybody that didn't know, RJ is the only one that has a rookie moment. That is the first game for him, as well as minted in his rookie year and his first Top Shot moment. Everybody else is sort of 2-badge rookie. So with that, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about Minted Madness. Before we do that, though, questions from the chat. One of the best things about last week that I thought went really well with Taylor and Chugs and Greg. What questions do people have out there? What do you want to hear? What are you interested in hearing people have different context than you talk about in any way, shape, or form? And I think that would be helpful for us to make sure that we're addressing some of the things that you guys want to hear about, instead of just talking off the top about what it is that we care about. So I'm going to give it a minute or two for some of those questions to flow in if they're there. For everybody else, if you're not going to write a question, go ahead and smash that like button. I saw Phil D in the chat. He was pumping it up. It does help us a lot to reach more people and expand our audience and get some of this stuff in. So if you could like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff, please do that. So let us take a look at some of these questions that are coming in, and we will go for that. Let's see. So Antonis has a question. Papadopoulos. I think this is Antonis. You might be one of the entries in the top of the mint moments side of things. So the question is, what's the best way to evaluate $500 to $1,000 moments? For that investment, what should we look for? Is there anything that's in that range like that you look at in terms of upside, in terms of stability? Are we playing are all of us kind of playing in that end of the pool?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially lately, there's a lot of Series 1 stuff in that price range that like really has taken a hit like in the past, maybe 3 or 4 days. I think it felt like Series 1 hung on a lot longer than Series 2 did during this downturn. But I know I picked up one of the GAWD blocks from the conference
final. Who is
that? GAWD Leonard. Kawhi.
I was waiting for that.
You are. Yeah. So people have been joking that you look like LG's long lost third brother, and the mispronunciation of basketball player names just confirms it. So
that's
okay. That's a tough one. Karis Levert. Yeah. I won't shame you too much for that. So you picked up a couple Kawhi Leonards though.
No, I just picked up one because it was it had fallen so far from that was over 1,000 not that long ago, and it had fallen below 500 actually. I think when I picked it up. So I mean, there's I look for I'm always looking for stars. I'm always looking for young players that are coming up that I think are going to be good. I look at rookies. There's. And I think the thing that is sort of undersold is just following the news and watching games. Like, see the players that are doing well, and then see what their moments at, and then go shopping in that price range and see if you find something you like. I mean, I like doing that more than anything. It's just watching a couple of games, and I happen to be a fan of a team in the Brooklyn Nets that has a porous defense, so everybody's best player has a game and a half against us. So. I get a good look at everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's Chugs, any thoughts on that?
Well, I was just going to say, like, I'm looking at, kind of a range of prices, and I'm not necessarily going to just start spitting out names, but basically, like, to me, it's like get yourself a pool of names that you kind of want to target regardless of price, and let those prices come to you versus like chasing something. For me, I'm looking right now like what's under 1,000, right? Because we were saying 500 to 1,000, and I'm just scrolling down from the top. Like, there's a Joel Embiid assist from Series 1 assist that's under 3,000 net. Like a Joel Embiid, like that's a name like I would have penciled down. Like, keep an eye on him. There's a Paul George, like not my favorite guy, but like that's another one. There's a Ben Simmons. I'm actually really high on Ben Simmons. This one's a season tip-off, so maybe not maybe that, like the one-off series set stuff, maybe not as high on. But basically, my point would be just try to keep it simple. Have a bucket of names that you really like, or they're like all NBA caliber, kind of all-timer potential, and just let prices come to you. That would be kind of my sort of how I would look at it, right?
Yeah, I tend to go after players more than prices, I think. More than
exactly.
Yeah, I like that. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned this Joel Embiid because I bought it at $1,300. So that's a loss on my part.
It's even better now.
Yeah. So and for everybody else that's not familiar, I am on addmorefunds.com. I will post it in here. The charts that I am looking at here are charts that are focused on. That are part of a paid subscription. So just keep that in mind. You can see all of all of this detail in here about market cap dynamics for free, but in order to see sort of the listing charts and the sales charts over time, you do need to pay a subscription. I find it very helpful, so it's totally worth it to me. So when I look at moments as well, especially like in the market, I always look at them in context, right? So it's not just this is $1,000 now, but where was it? What is it? Where are the recent sales for this? Is this 1,000 and every other sale that's been there is 600 and am I massively overpaying for this relative to what it's sold? Or is this on its way down because we're in a bear market or something like that? Or is a really low listing for something more liquid? So if you look at this more broadly, like again, timing wise, like this massive spike that we had in user growth that came up and it pushed it above the $1,500 mark. I think I probably bought it somewhere in here. But it was
classic plunge.
Right. But like before that massive spike, it was at $1,000 price point, right? So like before we had 4X users, it was in this $1,000 range. So if this is $9.99 now, like, and it's kind of come back down, if we have, you know, in theory, like as S1 becomes more scarce and those types of things, this is actually like not very much overpaying for what you might have been able to get to before there was a hype cycle around it. So, hey, maybe it is a really good buy at just under $1,000. Someone's trying to get liquid for that, you know, whatever else that they're trying to do. But S1 base less than 3,000, like, you know, it might be a good price point to come in at. So I sort of look at things not just, again, to Steve's point of like, I'm not just looking for, or excuse me, to Chuck's point, like I'm not just looking for like a price at a specific point. I'm letting things come to me, like, but I need to see where those things are and how it got there. Let's answer like one or two more here. Let's see. Here we go. This is a good one, and it comes up a lot. And I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to talk about it, especially because there's so many challenges going on right now. So Ed's got a great question here. At what point do challenges become too expensive for the challenge reward? For example, Mike Conley SS, how would we forecast what a moment may be valued at? So if we look at the seeing stars for Mike Conley, I'm pretty sure that
I was gonna pull it too.
Yeah, I'm just like, I forget how to look at the low asks for that across the board.
So I've got, if you go to, well, I've got all 5 moments are averaging, call it $63 a piece. Something it's $59 to $68. 3 of the 5 are 61, 63, 63. So call it the 60s. So, you know, pull out a little trusty.
It's been there.
Yeah, I mean, basically 300, a little over 300. I mean, off the top, I think I tweeted out about this. And again, Plunge, I should like send you the link for it. I tweeted out basically that that this was, you know, it was just like too expensive. And really the main tell for me is you've got 35,000 plus as the supply on this. The timeline on this challenge is over 2 weeks. God knows how much supply is going to come from like these, especially these base moments, right? Like God knows how much is going to hit in the next like 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks. You have 665, you know, 677, 600 something listings here. So in other words, there isn't much of these out there yet. The supply literally, not even just the supply in general, but the supply of listings could literally like 10x in like 2 weeks. That's only that like in almost every scenario, that means prices will go down and make this challenge much more reasonable or palatable. I mean, look, I'm a Grizzlies guy. Mike Conley's freaking could run for mayor tomorrow and be mayor of Memphis. But I'm not paying $300 for this. Now, if it were to drop down to like $100 for those 5 moments, I'd probably do it. But I guess so. With that particular example, like that's more of a like supply, like lack of supply issue. But in terms of like evaluating whether a challenge is worth it or not.
Well, how would you go about evaluating what a Mike Conley might be worth?
Right. You take, I mean, your best case, assuming the Mike Conley has no future utility, which it sounds like it's not, like it's been revealed basically that the Seeing Stars challenge is not going to involve him. So it's going to be basically a standalone moment. I think from there, it's I say simple, but it really is as simple as just look at Mike Conley's other commons and try to kind of extrapolate like where he's at in certain, whether it's his S1, which I think is like a 3,000 something count. He's got probably like a 15,000 count S2. You can kind of back your way into what the expected value would be based on how many completions there are. And you can get really good color on how many completions there are if you're following Greg Murray, who puts out updates on this like all the time. Yeah, company man, boom, boom, follow Greg. Anyway, so you can kind of piece it together where you can get kind of a rough idea like where a Mike Conley should be valued. And then you could say, okay, I'm paying X for these pieces that are going to lead to this Mike Conley. This Mike Conley, according to where he currently is in the market and how many people are going to complete it, aka how many are going to get minted, I can get a rough idea of like what that should be worth. And it could be a range that's like within $200. It might be a pretty big window, but you can at least kind of ballpark it. And then you can sort of, it's hard to know exactly how far challenge piece prices fall. Like in some cases they fall like 80%. And in some cases they only fall like 20%. Like if it's a really good player, he might hold his value a little better by himself without utility. But if it's just random guys in the league, you got to pretty much assume like this 35,000, all 5 guys in here are relatively relevant, but like Victor Oladipo, like by himself with nothing, like a 35,000 count, like that should be like a $10 moment,
Yeah,
maybe
probably less.
That shouldn't be, a big find.
Right.
So I think
to your point about supply though, I think it's really important to recognize here, like if there is more supply coming out, they're going to come out in packs that you might have access to. So you might be able to
you might pull them
in packs, right? Like for, let's say you go in on this all-star pack, if they drop it before the end of the challenge, or, you get a Cool Cats 3-pack that has base set moments in it that are inclusive of, 3 or, maybe 2 of the 5 or something like that. So, I think to Ed's question earlier about like how you price that out, I think you're absolutely right on taking a look at existing pieces and then kind of working your way backwards. So for me, I probably wouldn't compare S2 stuff to S1. Relatively speaking, it may be an okay place to start, but probably like in between the 15,000 and the 4,000 here, somewhere in there for market cap. You're looking at somewhere in the 400 grand perspective, like 400 grand worth of market cap for Mike Conley, and then divide that by what you expect the mint count to be. Do we expect 5,000 people to complete this? Do we expect 10,000 people to complete this? Because it's all predicated, like the value of Mike Conley after the fact is entirely predicated on how many of them there are. So let's say that 5,000 people complete it or 10,000 people complete it. It's called 10,000 people complete it. You're looking at 2/3 of this, but multiplied, like it might be a $50 or $100 moment. I would bet that it's probably in the more like $100 range. And probably a mint size between 5 and 10,000 after it's all said and done, because I think more people will get these impacts, which will then catapult them forward into completing the challenge. And that's the point. And I want to make this really clear too. It is the point that there are 35,000 mint moments to complete the Mike Conley challenge. NBA Top Shot wants this to be easy and inexpensive, relatively speaking, so that people can enjoy it. Right? Not every challenge needs to be this massive hype craziness, right? It's supposed to be easy, but the more supply that comes out, the easier it will be. So we'll do some more questions later, next week. Come back, ask more stuff. I'm sure there's going to be an entire set of, feels like 2 years worth of news cycle between now and then. But Steef, any final thoughts on that before we switch here to finish up with some Mint Madness result review and Sweet 16 announcement?
No, I would just say, follow folks like Chugs and Greg who know that stuff forwards and backwards and get a sense of what you're getting into, because it's again it's easy to get burned on challenges by jumping in at the wrong time.
Yeah, and Jennifer Top Shot, who's in the chat right now, why not just buy Conley after the challenge? Great question, right? Like,
might not be a bad idea.
Right. If you really like Mike Conley and you don't care about any of the moments that it took to get there, and you're not worried about the fact that it might be a really low mint and it might command a high price that is more expensive than the moments that it took to get there, then yeah, that's a really good point as well, and something that everyone should consider. That said, there are types of challenges where the piece at the end is worth way more than the component points, and it's not as simple as like, let me just buy this after the fact. Luca is a good example with the master challenge, right? Like you could not have after the fact, like you would be in a bad spot. But for this one, that's certainly a viable place. So let's do this. We should have finished our handle hoopla stuff. So it looks like we've got 545 responses here. We're just going to walk through each of these and go one by one and see who.
Holy hell, that looks like a barn burner.
Wow.
That is an absolute barn burner. Paul Rudd's cousin, it looks like narrowly edging out by 5 votes. Paul Rudd's cousin. That's incredible. I would have expected Beef Boy 69 to take that one home. That's surprising. So Paul Rudd's cousin. Paul Rudd's cousin, are you in the chat? I did see Paul Rudd's cousin on Twitter acknowledge.
He pumped his name a little.
He did pump his name. It was funny seeing all these people come out of Twitter, out of the Twitter woodwork. All right, so 4v12. Edger and Flames handily defeating Lindy. Lindy, surprise win from last week up against a really weak 5 seed from Amir's region. Sorry, Amir. Ooh, first upset of the Amir region. We got an 11. This is, again, for everybody that wasn't here, all the seeds 9 to 11 were picked from a wheel of names. Like we literally spun a wheel and randomly assigned names to these things. So it's kind of funny that we're seeing some really good ones that have won. So Ball and Blockchain advances the first 11 seed, maybe the St. Bonaventure or like the Syracuse perhaps of the tournament. Another upset here, Chubby Bucket destroying Helen Keller.
Wow.
49. That was
Amir's going to be saddened by that one.
Amir is going to be sad. Yeah. That's wow. I saw Helen Keller 41 come out of the woodwork on Twitter as well. So yeah, those are your 4 Sweet 16 winners from the Blumenfield region. We've got Paul Rudd's cousin, Edger and Flames, Ball and Blockchain, and Chubby Bucket. All right, Chugs and Bugs, your region. Let's see how we did.
I want to see these results.
The 1 seed, Win Pax against the Grindfather, about a 30 vote margin there. It's comfortable, but not like I wouldn't feel great about that.
My heart wanted Grindfather, but my brain knew that WinPax was probably winning that.
And you know what's going to happen because WinPax is going up against Mrs. Chunky Magic, who we found like on Twitter.
Found out. Real. Yeah, she's like a singer. Maybe we'll get her on and she'll I don't know.
Awesome.
Maybe she's got some chops.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, we'll have in the Sweet 16 the WinPax versus Mrs. Chunky Magic lineup. Holy cow, we got another beatdown, another upset. MoBambaMoProblems knocking off King Henry the Day 2069.
That was a raffled name, right? 11 seed.
That was MoBambaMoProblems was a raffled name. Man. It was a raffled name in the play-in game. So MoBambaMoProblems has won two games.
They're trying to make history.
This is loyal Chicago all over again.
Yeah.
All right, and then it looks like Top Shot Mom squeaking out. Well, not squeaking out. I'd say that's a decisive victory. That's a Joe Biden-esque victory over actually Jeb Bush.
Shout out to actually Jeb Bush, by the way, because he was putting up videos of him doing the vote.
Yes!
I don't want to say repping us, but he was putting out videos saying that this was a cool thing that we're doing and kind of interactive with everybody. So shout out to actually Jeb Bush for that.
Shout out to actually Jeb Bush.
I thought you were going to shout out Joe Biden for a second.
Oh no! Shout out Uncle Joe, President.
Let's make this an apolitical podcast in general. I think that we can be an affirmatively anti-awful stuff podcast. I'm cool with, or like a YouTube stream, but I don't want to back a particular political party or candidate. But anyway, so yeah, I think that we got a good matchup there. So we've got the 1 versus the 5 and the 11 versus the 2 in your region. Greg Murray region. Number 1 seed goes down. Charizard Gorar knocks out the 1 seed, Raindrop Drop Top Michael Scott, which I love.
That is disappointing.
Yeah, I'm all about that. I think I voted for Charizard Gorar. I had submitted.
I did actually as well.
Holy cow! we're gonna have this, check this out. We got Raptors Delight, another one, two random seeds being backdoor bandit. So we've got a 13 versus an 8 in the top of the Greg Murray bracket. What?
Quite literally mint madness, my friends.
Mint madness in every way, shape, and form. All right, next up we've got Heavy Banana Notes beaten gang sign John Wall, which is probably a good thing. I think the less gang sign situation we have is probably a good thing. So Heavy Banana Notes, I voted for that one as well. And then Thick Jesus 42069. And I'm pretty sure that Jeb Bush, he had a really good take on this one when he was going through his form and filling it out on that YouTube video. I think a stronger name is Thick Jesus, like just straight Thick Jesus. If it didn't have 42069, it might be the rocket ship.
It's too much. The numbers have a diminishing returns, right?
Yeah.
After a certain while, it's just too much.
It's a taco problem. Yeah. How many tacos is too many tacos? Well,
right.
Yeah, 5 is too many tacos most days. So we've got in the Greg Murray region, we've got the 8 Charizard Gorar playing the Raptors Delight 13 seed. I kind of like Raptors Delight there. Not gonna lie. Heavy Banana Notes facing off against Thick Jesus, so a 3v2 there. All right, in the real Phil D region, Phil D, you're in the chat. What are we gonna tell him? We're gonna finish off here. So smash that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. The LeBron James hairline, #1 overall seed, handily beating Old Honda Civic. A little closer on. Oh, who's your papa? Who's your papa? I've seen you in the chat all night, pumping your own bags. The NFT to EBT. Funny fun story. The guy for the Twitter follow, he said he accidentally said NFT to EBT. He was trying to make his username EBT to NFT, like he was using food stamps to buy it.
Which would have made more sense, right? Yeah.
Which would have made way more sense. But in general, good job. He did it. He pumped his bags on that one. Narrow margin of victory, 13 total votes. This is a hanging Chad situation. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but well done for the Who's Your Papa crowd. Looks like PlugFather gets knocked off by Manny Pacquiao relatively handily there with a 56% a positive response here. So we're going, looks like we've got all chalk in this bracket. We've got 1, 4, 3, and then Mr. Broccoli also knocking out Mr. Snugglepuggle here. So we have, if I'm not mistaken, chalk across the board in the RealPhilD region. So Chugs, how do you feel about that? That RealPhilD, who had 8 choices, has 4 of those advancing to the Sweet 16, the most possible, and you have what, 1 or 2?
I don't know. I guess you gotta leave it to the people, you know. So I try to make picks that I think were that I thought were good. I thought Daniel, the Dutch NBA fan, was gonna be formidable, but you know what happens is you get MoBambaMoProblems, and it's a bracket buster. You can't plan for that. You know, wheel of names. The wheel of names is not forgiving, you know. So
they get hot at the right time.
Let the chips fall where they may.
Well, wow. All right. Well, hey, congrats to Antonis Papadopoulos. Thanks to the haters for motivating me. I love that. I appreciate everybody chiming in and participating in this. So we will send out the Sweet 16 voting for tomorrow morning. I probably am going to go and rest a little bit and try and get some sleep tonight. But tomorrow morning I'll send that out, or someone from the First Minute sent it out. And then from there, we will go forward with our remaining rounds. Friday, I think we're going to have the final 4 announced at the First Mint live show. So if you're here and you're one of the Sweet 16, reach out on Twitter to one of us. We'll probably try and reach out to you as well if you put your Twitter handle in your forum entry, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, we might be highlighting those folks. I don't know if that's a secret, but it might be. But we'll probably be featuring. Yeah, keep in touch, right? Because the final 4 will perhaps be able to. I'm just spitballing here, but perhaps be able to pump their own bags in some way, shape, or form, and make a case for why they have the best Top Shot username. So, Antonis, if you make it all the way, hey, you might have to do it in public on the Friday show. Any final thoughts? We're about at 10:20, so a tight 75 turns into a tight 80. But anything else, Steve? Chugs and Bugs. Steve, did you vote? Any surprises in the bracket?
No, I mean, I think it's fallen pretty much along my bracket. That the raindrop, and now I can't even remember.
Raindrop, drop top, Michael Scott.
Drop top, Michael Scott.
That is a little bit heartbreaking for me, but you know, I'll survive.
Fair enough. Jugs, any final thoughts?
Not with the bracket. Just, you know, everybody be patient. News keeps flying out. You know, try not to overreact. Try not to punt your stuff the second you hear something or see something that you maybe don't like. And at the same time, try not to, you know, rush too much into FOMO bids and overpay for something. Just be patient and try to have fun. You know, that's the goal, right? So
totally. Totes my goats. All right, gentlemen, we're gonna call it a night. Thanks everybody. If you're on your way out, if you haven't already, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. We will be back on the First Mint live stream on Friday. That is the end of the week. So Friday at, I think we do like 5 p.m. Pacific, so 7 Eastern, a little bit earlier. We'll be on Twitter. Follow Steef. It's at Steef TS, if I'm not mistaken, on Twitter.
Yes, sir.
Follow Chugs and Bugs at Chugs and Bugs. Follow at PlungeFather at the First Mint. I just started a list, an NFT Top Shot list on Twitter. I've never done that before, so follow that if you want to see all the people that I follow and get my news from. But otherwise, we will bid you good night. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll leave you there. And if you got anything, hit us up. We're trying as best we can to answer all of DMs and get as much insight into your hands as possible. But we'll talk soon. Until next week, or until Friday at least. Au revoir.